Hello, and welcome to the Visible Women Podcast. I'm Corinne Corbett, and along with co-host Kim DeBrew, we put issues related to diversity, inclusion, and appearance in the spotlight and examine how they impact the lives of women of color. On today's show, we're going to have a discussion about a powerful subject, fighting for Black girls. What do we mean by that? Well, in many ways, Black girls rarely have a chance to be girls. They are treated differently not only based upon their appearance, but also assumptions about their behavior. You can probably recall the incident last fall when Faith Benedy, a sixth grader, along with another student, Tyrielle Davis, were banned from the school because their hair violated school's hair policy. So you probably didn't hear about the students at Xavier University who launched the I Am Not My Hair online campaign to support these girls. At the same time in Cincinnati, 3 Black girls attending different schools were bullied because of their natural hair. With the help of one of their hairstylists, turned the tables on their bullies by banding together and flaunting their natural hair in a video to empower other girls. But it isn't just about hair. A study conducted by Rebecca Epstein, Jamila Blake, and Thalia Gonzalez called Girl Interrupted found the perception is Black girls need less nurturing, Black girls need less protection, Black girls need to be supported less, Black girls need to be comforted less, are more independent, know more about adult topics, and know more about sex. And these perceptions are assigned to Black girls as young as 5 and follow them into adulthood.
And so while this study focused on the juvenile justice system, the implications of the findings are really critical for our work and for this platform. Corynne's work with young girls via the Beauty Biz Camp and my work with nonprofits, having a focus on empowering women and girls, really put a premium on our work to ensure that the girls in our sphere of influence are safe, are protected, are bold, are courageous. And both their physical and psychological well-being is at stake. In research conducted by Lisa DeMoore, she really talked about guiding teens through the 7 transitions to adulthood in her work of 2017 called Untangle. In that work, she cites a large-scale national study. In that study, she talks about the first signs of puberty showing up in the form of breast buds in different demographic categories. She says that 24% of African American girls develop breast buds by the age of 7, 15% of Hispanic girls, 10% of Caucasian girls, and 2% of Asian girls. She goes on to make the point that for girls whose physical development is far ahead of their psychological development, the impact can be great on their self-esteem and self-perception. So if you pair that study on Girl Interrupted with external perceptions, being that girls are more mature, with the physical nature, it really puts a squeeze on how girls can retain their self-identity, their positive feeling about themselves. And so today we're really grateful to have a robust conversation. I'm gonna let Corynne do the actual introduction of Thysha, and then I'll ask the first question.
Well, and I think it's important that we say that as we're talking about girls, and the reason that we're talking about girls is because girls become women, and the experiences that girls have follow them, and they stay with them for their life. So we're really delighted to have Thysha Shabazz with us. She's a self-proclaimed loud Black girl, a theory and definition she has created which represents the often stereotyped loud Black girl or angry Black girl beliefs. Thysha has always used her voice working in the media since she was a teen as a print journalist, then an on-air reporter, and as a young professional, then as a publicist and art event producer with her own agency, Shabazz Communications. Through her many experiences while working in the media industry and growing up loud, as she calls it, she's met people who often disapproved of her naturally interested and talkative personality. Years of the perception and misperception motivated Thysha to establish the Loud Girl movement. Welcome to the show, Thysha.
Thank you so much for having me, Corynne and Kim. Thank you.
So I love absolutely everything about the Loud Girl movement. Its radical answer really crushes stereotypes that would place limits on Black girls and women. So we would love to know a little bit more about your origin story and how the Loud Girl movement got started. We want to know about the work you're doing, the hopes and dreams you have for your work, and the long-term goals of the project.
So thank you so much. I rarely am asked this question. I grew up very outgoing. I actually was voted most talkative and most outgoing in high school. And I was talking when they called my name. So I was very much just a very energetic, loud, involved Black teen and young girl as a student, always in something, a dance captain, drill team sergeant. And I lived that way. And gratefully and thankfully, I was always supported by my mother and my father. I never thought anything was wrong with these, personality traits. And the origin of the Loud Girl movement is actually quite interesting. I was visiting Virginia, where I'm from, and I was surprising my niece. And she didn't know I was in the hallway looking. And I started to observe her teacher and her. And my niece is also a outgoing, young, smart, brilliant, excited Black student. And the way her teacher was responding to her, even though there was a 25-year gap, it immediately threw me back into school. And I said, I cannot believe this is still going on. I have to do something about this. She cannot feel what I felt all throughout middle school, elementary school, and high school. I will not allow that. So right then and there, that's where the movement started. And the work we do, first and foremost, and I always love to say this every opportunity I get, is with Black girls. So I don't want to change anyone's perception. That's secondary. I want to change Black girls' perception about their voice by telling them, number one, I think it's an absolute gift. My voice has allowed me my career now. I've been in the publicity industry and I've been working for myself for over a decade. So I know that this voice is a powerful thing. I can get on the phone and call people. I've been in rooms and I'm not afraid to speak up. So that's a gift. I want to tell young Black girls that it's a gift. So we do that with workshops. We have a blog. We have a ton of social media interaction, and we're constantly pushing that message out there with our work. Secondly, we do talk to educators and parents, because here's the deal. You have to change their concept and their perception. And you will be so surprised. I spoke at NYU, had an education workshop, and I asked all the teachers to raise their hand if you think that being quiet is associated with being a good girl student. And these are a room full of seasoned educators, and they raised their hand. That's amazing, right? That's insane. So you think that being a good girl student is associated with being quiet. So then I'm automatically out of the game. My niece is automatically out of the game. So that's what we really like to do next, is really get these educators and parents to change that idea. And then lastly, we put a lot of fun on it. We talk about, we celebrate Cardi B, we celebrate Michelle Obama, because all of this is Black boys too. And I think that also makes it very attractive to young girls who are going through puberty, who are in it right now, who are in school, to know that, you're not odd, you're not awkward, you're not just, a troublemaker. You're really fun, you're really bold, you're really smart to ask these questions, to speak up when no one else will speak up. So that's what we do. Long term, I want to encourage as many loud girls, as I call them, across the world that I can. I always am willing to share my story, my vulnerabilities. I get DMs all the time, literally. People just DMing mothers and children saying, I'm going through this in school. And 9 times out of 10, I've been through that experience. So just to help them. And I just want to continue to help as many loud girls as I can.
Wow, that's great. What did the teacher do to make you feel like being loud was not a good thing?
Wow, what did they not do? Well, I'll start with this one. I think I might be jumping the gun a little bit, but the first thing, and I'll talk about a male teacher. So I'm from Chesapeake, Virginia. Shout out to Virginia. We drive and we go to the grocery store, and I was at the grocery store with my father. And at the time, I don't know how old my father was, but my father is a fairly young looking man, like all Black people probably. The next day, my male gym teacher said, I saw you at the store last night with that man buying you stuff. And I mean, for a minute, I'm 13, so I'm in the 7th grade. I had no idea. I was like, what man? And he was like, that man, he was buying you like potato chips and gel. And I was like, my dad? But the association, naturally, that I am in an adult situation, that I'm with a gentleman who's buying me things, right? And we know what that means. And or the assumption, I should say, right? I mean, so, and this is a child. I am a child. I probably went home to gel a baby doll's hair because I used to love to do my doll's hair. But the adult ideologies that's been put on a child, that was a gym teacher right in my community. That would be an experience. They've said things about tights or clothes that I would wear, but a lot of teachers directly to the voice. So that was to body, but directly to the voice. I remember I loved history. I still do. And I had a history teacher say, well, Thysha, you're not going to get an A because you talk too much in class, like all those interruptions, all those questions. And I remember having to advocate for myself, which is a big thing. I know people have talked about in these studies. And I was like, I don't even want to say his name. I know his name. Of course, it just comes fresh to my mind. Mr. So-and-so, I know I deserve an A. Like, I went above and beyond and went to a museum to see a Nazi exhibit. Like, I know I deserve this A. And he was adamant. He was like, I cannot give you an A because of your interruptions. You're always volunteering to read out loud. You're, volunteering to do your reports first. It gets in the way of me being a teacher. And I remember being really, I can feel the passion. I was so upset. Yeah. So it's very real. Just the silencing of the voice, that's very real in schools. And then this is a really big piece. You all stop me because I can go on. I love talking.
No, this is great. Keep going.
So you are encouraging a child. You're telling them this voice is the problem, which is a natural thing that people should do in school. So do we see how that intersects and how that doesn't make sense? Here's a child, a Black girl. I am engaged. When I learned about World War II and Hitler, I was obsessed. I loved it. I wanted to know more. I'm going the extra mile and reading about it in my free time, watching documentaries about it that I can get my hands on, willing to say, oh, can I read out loud? I want to share my report. I learned something else. What we want quote unquote children to do in school, but yet because of the Black woman stereotype, because of ideologies that this teacher has had long before he became a teacher, but just about Black women and Black girls and associating my Black girlhood with Black womanhood, right? Because that's separate. It naturally is, this is a problem.
Those stereotypes are not theoretical, right? They are internalized, and probably from the earliest ages, as you described. Some of the social science research that's emerging really is documenting some of those internalized stereotypes. There's some work that's been done by scholars, researchers, Claude Steele and Josh Aronson, that describe a phenomenon called stereotype threat. And what happens in stereotype threat is that students in their study, they've studied professionals as well, underperform academically in situations where they believe that they will confirm a stereotype. So the way it might work for a woman is that they might bomb on a math test or a science test, get a lower score than they might if you tell them at the beginning of the test, this is testing how well girls do at math. In a clinical environment, they found that girls will underperform in those environments. The same thing goes for kids of color, for Black, Latino students. Underperform if sometimes it's told it's an academic test. So to me, what I want to know is what happens when you are both Black and a woman, how those stereotypes impact you internally. So I'd love to hear a word about voice. You talked about voice several times. What worked for you, perhaps, as a student to kind of counteract that stereotype? And what are you doing in the Loud Girl movement to elevate the voices of women and girls?
I love that stereotype threat. So what would happen, so let's use that model in that same situation. The one saving grace, and I talk about this a lot in my blog, is my mother and my father. My mother is a Loud Girl. Clearly my father loves that because he's with her. And they always encourage this. My father is a Muslim, so I would speak at his masjid. My mother's Christian, so I would speak at church. I had outlets to use my voice. I was always encouraged to say the prayer, or Thysha, read that in our family. It was very much encouraged in my family. So that gave me the strength in the world to continue to use my voice. And I literally, when you were talking about stereotypes, I always have situations I can pull on. I was in school and I had a friend, and we were, at the time, we were the only Black girls in this particular class. And I would raise my hand. I was in fourth grade. I would raise my hand and ask to speak all the time, but she wouldn't. And I later learned her mother was on drugs, and she was being raised by her grandmother, who was very elderly and probably didn't have the energy to put into a child of that age. And she would always kind of squeal down. And I remember saying, girl, ask Miss So-and-so for that. And I would just, kind of encourage her. but she didn't have that. So I always often think about what happened to her and her voice down the line. I would feel this way in school, but I always would come home to or have this kind of up and down wave. Well, it can't be that bad. My mom loves it. It can't be that bad. My dad loves it. But I think that other children might not have that, especially if their parents have that belief too, right? And I always say this, we all watch the same television that has told you Black women are problematic and stereotypical, and they love to argue, and they love to roll their necks. I mean, we've all brought into that belief, right? So it's a lot to say, wait a minute, that's not me. I don't believe what the world is telling me. Who has the strength to really do that? I had a loving mother and father, and I still would have to, say, Thysha, that's not true. And sometimes, in the vulnerable years of teenagehood, I didn't believe that. So that happens. I know about that underperforming. If a child felt that way, I mean, I fussed that teacher down. I got that A. But if another child felt that way, how could she go on? And I don't say that to say, oh, I'm special. I mean, really, who can go on and keep doing that when you know that's the stereotype? And the way that what we do at the Loud Girl Movement to encourage that, and the only way you really can do it, it's like math. It's like an equation. When you do speak up, you take the risk, X plus Y. So you take the risk and you say something equals this. And this is what you want. And that's the only way you really can encourage young people to do it, because they might say, they're just going to think I'm this kind of person again. What's the use in doing it? And what has been my checks and balance throughout my life, when I have spoke up, what has happened? And of course, over the years, I have more examples to pull on than not. So it's like, okay, I know this works. And that's what I think young Black girls have to do. When I use my brain, which you are smart, when I'm valued, when I speak up and say, no, I have my grades, I want to do an average, I want to speak to someone about this, what happens? So you have to go back to what has been a positive for you. Because, and honestly, if you don't do that, if you don't stack those great situations, you're going to not use your voice. And I'll just say this, and then that becomes, to me, what I think is a real danger, because now you're someone who is hating something that's naturally a part of you.
So I actually have a comment. When I think about, the student that was in the class with you in the 4th grade who was shrinking down, I did that because I got skipped and I was with older students and I didn't want to stand out. But when you do that as a young child, you become a woman who shrinks, and you cannot advocate for yourself for raises, for inequality on anything at the job. So it becomes a cautionary tale. And there are lots of women who do not stand up for themselves in work or in relationships or anything. They've just, that silencing of the voice silenced it pretty much, until they reawaken it. It's not like it's going to come back just because you became an adult. It stays silenced until you realize that you need to use your voice. I guess my question is responsibility. So as Black women, so you're doing this with girls, but what is our responsibility as Black women to empower girls, not just through this movement, but every day? Like, what should we be doing to tell girls that their voices matter? We had a discussion on Michelle Obama's book in our last episode. That's one thing that I love about her thoughts, or that owning your story was really important. But in that is having a voice to tell your story. So what's our responsibility to make sure that girls understand that this is not a game, that this impacts your life?
I love that you shared that, Corynne. That's so amazing. So there you go. You were smart enough to be skipped to an entire grade. You get there and you're like, I'm not going to say anything. I talk about this on the blog in a particular story. I was working for a hair brand. I remember being in the room. It's this big, shiny room. And I'm like, I don't deserve to be at this table. And I didn't say one word. And I was the only Black woman. And they were talking about natural hair care. And I've been natural forever. Okay? But that's what you do, right? And I just want to go back and then I'm going to answer your question. First of all, what that does as a child, it starts to become a core limiting belief, right? So no longer can you just say, okay, I'm going to switch. Tomorrow I'm going to be powerful. That's why sometimes with our Instagram world, you read a good quote. No, it takes more than just reading. I mean, you got to fix that deep down inside. And we see women who have not fixed that deep down inside. I was one of them, right? Before I started to look at this in a deeper way. So if you don't switch that, Corynne, you'll be the 4th grade and it'll become a core limiting belief as an adult. And how do we change that? And what responsibility do we have, not only to girls, but to women? I think the first thing is for them to see you moving fearlessly. And let me explain that. That's the vulnerabilities and that's speaking up. It is. Because what happens, everybody's watching. Now I have a daughter, which I just can't even believe all the time. She's 8 months, it's a new experience to me. She is watching me. I mean, she tries to mock and imitate the smallest of things. And I think about this into adulthood. So what is she going to see me do when I don't speak up? They see us, all those times are teaching them, seeing us not speak up and using our voice. But what we have to do, again, it goes back to my other answer of stacking it up. See when it did work. So I'll just use this example. My mother was like, can I see the manager? No. Can I see your manager? Can I talk to the manager type person? And I would like be embarrassed, like, what is she doing? But there would be times where she would sit down with her bills at a kitchen table and she would say, oh no, this price isn't right. And she would call and then she would get money back for the family. And I would say, wow, she just saved $100. So again, stacking when it works. And then I wouldn't be embarrassed. I'm like, she's just not being like some, attitudinal person. She's being the lioness of our family. She's saying, no, this is not right. Our bill should be adjusted. And then, you hear the person say, oh, Miss Shabazz, you're right. So we have to stack it. I think another thing we have to do for young girls is to be very honest about, and this is a big one to me, where this comes from. So I love history. I've said it before. History has so many answers for us. This image, along with so many other detrimental images for Black people in America, was created post-enslavement to continue a narrative that Black people are problematic, right? So when you start to look at history and you research and you say, okay, well, this doesn't even have any legitimacy. Like I remember I've done some research for our blog and I found out that Black women ask questions or, ask to speak to the manager just as many times as any other woman. But I mean, if you looked at pop culture and media, it would tell you, no, they don't. But this was an actual study. But you have to look at so why was this image created? Why can we all close our eyes? And I say, think of one angry Black woman on television and you can think of her like that. Why? So I always find, when I talk to young girls, they say, well, people are problematic. Black women are problematic. I say, well, have you ever seen a white woman ask to speak to a manager or someone else? So history, right? And then 3, so that's 1, watching us, history. And then the third one, really breaking this thing down. When I speak up for myself, I am using my voice. It's not a negative. It's not a reality show, check. I'm speaking up because I believe in what's truthful. How many times have Black women done that throughout history, period? Okay, Shirley Chisholm, okay? Look at Maxine Waters right now. The only one standing by herself saying, wait a minute, I don't like this. So this same voice that you all try to make a caricature about, right, in all movies and things like that, really is a voice of power, a voice of truth, when other people may not have the courage to use it. So stacking it, showing them opportunity, showing them the history of it, and really breaking this thing all the way down. Because when you start to break down the stereotype, you see something that you thought was powerful is not really that powerful.
Awesome. I so enjoyed reading several of your blog posts, and I wrote in my notes that the response to women using their voices can be to be questioned, to be punished, to be shamed. And I'm thinking about your daughter, his baby. Mine is 12 years old. And I'm trying to kind of make sense of that narrative for her. So when there are moments where you see that the world says back to your bold, courageous, empowered, powerful Black girl, Black woman, that, you know what, we want to invalidate you, we want to, make your light dimmer. Are there things that the history piece, I think, is a very strong, powerful narrative to share, but are there teachable moments, things that you found real time that can help be teaching moments for our kids and for our girls about that reaction? I remember watching Serena Williams' last tennis match, the US Open, with my daughter. And I struggled with how to explain what was going on to her, and took probably much more resource, because I was all in my feelings about it too, resource to explain
Yes.
what was going on to her. But any thoughts about that?
That's a very good question. Honestly, Kim, I ask myself that all the time. Listen, I'm telling you, this work, I've been working on Loud for about 5 years, and it's totally changed now with the girl in my house, So I ask myself, I think it's an ongoing answer. You have to find skills and tools. And I know this is going to sound strange to what I'm saying, but one of them, which I want to share with my daughter, and I share with myself in my personal meditation and when I'm getting centered, is I don't have to use my voice all the time. And let me explain that, because I know that sounds strange. I have a movement called the Loud Girl Movement. I'm talking about voice. But I realized that, I first of all, by seeing that my voice is a gift and it's a powerful, awesome thing, I know that like anything, I don't have to use it all the time. I feel like it's like a superpower, And I feel like at times, sometimes people are like, pull your superpower out, Thysha, for me. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. I'm going to use it when I'm called to use my superpower. So I don't use my voice for everything. I don't have to use it for everything. Does that make sense? I really don't. And everything is not a situation that I need to be involved in. But for the things that I do believe in, that I believe in to my core, that I am passionate about, oh yes, I am going to speak up. So I think that's a good lesson. When Serena went to that umpire and told him what was the absolute truth, she is an athlete. She is probably the best athlete in the world. Let's just sit with that for a minute. She is probably the best athlete in the world. So she's not playing about her game. So yes, she can speak up to that.
Voice is a superpower, though. That alone, we can just drop the mic right there.
Somebody at Dunkin' Donuts saying something to me when the door, literally, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, some things are not important to me, but some things are more than important. So that's one. And then, this is going to sound awkward, but these are just my beliefs, and this is what I feel coming out. I do think that being a Black woman in America, we all are aware of, we talked about the boardroom, Corynne. I know your history being in the beauty industry, being in those boardrooms, saying things, needing to speak up. But there's been times when I'm at the boardroom and someone says something, and I'm like, I'm not even going to respond to that. As my mama would say, that doesn't even require me to respond to that, And I think there's a power in that too, knowing when to use my voice, knowing when to hold and when to fold in a way. So that's something I think about a lot. But that's a very loaded question, because what's passionate to a 12-year-old, it's not the same for me. And when I was 12, something that probably I would look at now and laugh wouldn't mean that. So, kind of pick and choose when to use this really powerful energy, because you are powerful.
Kim, I want to ask you, what did you say to your daughter about the Serena situation? And how did you explain that?
I don't actually remember, because it was very emotional for all of us. So at the moment, I turned off the TV and I said, let's just be still, sweetie, and let's understand what's happening. There are two Black women, two women of color at the absolute top of their profession. And what's undermining their moving forward is some ref, his decision. And, that in and of itself is so upsetting. It's upsetting for us to watch. So let's just understand, sometimes when you move forward in life, you might be at the top of your game. There's going to be somebody there trying to tell you can't proceed. And I really just tried to comfort her, honestly, because we were so looking forward to this match. It was like the highlight of our day, and the way it devolved was just really upsetting for all of us.
Yeah, same here. I think as an adult woman, I was upset, very upset. Other people's behaviors need to be discussed. It's not like something that we can just, kind of like let pass like water under the bridge, because then they see that it's unfair. Young people see it's unfair and then feel helpless in the situation. But understanding that using your own voice, it matters in the situation, whether you get justice or not.
Can I just add, I think that's a very good answer. That's something that would have been great to share with a young person. We always are diagnosing our behavior as Black women and Black people in America. Let's diagnose other people's behavior, because really what he was doing in that game was unfair. And so that's a teachable moment. Sometimes other people's biases have nothing to do with you. It's about them. So I think that's another angle to teach.
And I think one of the things that becomes important maybe for women to understand is that it's not just important education for girls to learn to use their voice in school but it's also, if we think about, health situations and the maternal death rate, morbidity rate for Black women and Black mothers, they're not speaking up about their health. There are some dire consequences that can happen. So using and understanding that being loud can save your life. And that's another Serena moment there to say, this is not right, because we've heard about the women who have died from complications sitting in the emergency room waiting for service, not being loud. it's not just about perception. I think that we have to check ourselves if we are, sometimes we fall into that respectability bucket and say, oh God, I want to be seen this sort of way. And that's detrimental to us if we think that using our voice makes us be seen or something, kind of uncultured or whatever way you want to look at it. But understanding that there's real life implications, in education, at work, in relationship as well. Because if you don't use your voice or your voice is suppressed, then there's other things that can happen to you as well.
I like that. I had to write that down. Real life implications, Corynne. You're right.
And I think that girls see those kinds of real life things they see every day in their lives. They're modeled for them in front of them. And you hear a lot of times children of daughters of people who have been domestically abused are the voice of reason for their mothers sometimes, because they can see what the woman who's now shrunk and been devalued does not.
One of the things I was picking up reading about your work is that if in fact there is a stereotype in operation about Black women and girls that's, sort of loud and unacceptable, and I'll just use the term sassy, ghetto, bossy, spicy. If that is the narrative anyway, what can women step into that's powerful about in that space? How can they create kind of more spaciousness around those terms and not limit them? Yeah, in the face of when things are disagreeable, like how can you make that a bigger space to occupy? I would love to, if you could leave us with some words for our listeners who have mentees and nieces and cousins and daughters, just folks in their lives to try to be able to reframe that narrative when it's difficult. Any things that you would say to the folks that we are touching with this format?
The first thing I thought about was Black folks in America, we have remixed everything, don't we? We literally, hip hop, biggest music in the world right now, came from a remix. It's like a jumbo of jazz and all these things. We can do that. We are some phenomenal people. And I think I look at Loud the same way. I know the stereotype. I'm very well aware of it. I know I was created. I've done a ton of research about it, and I have no problem with it. And I think that's the way to do it. You can't shame a woman unashamed. So if somebody calls me loud, I'm like, oh, okay. It doesn't do anything to me. And there was a time when it did. Like when I was a teenager, somebody would say, oh man, I would be done. But so much of this work now, I have no qualms about that. If somebody's like, oh, Thysha has a big mouth, she does. I speak up for things. I have gotten so many things in my life that I wanted because I've spoken up for it. Just Corynne, just not to make this interview about this, but I had a home birth, and I am an older mother. I'll just say that.
That's loud by itself. Wow. Okay.
And so many people, were telling me I can't do that, and it was a wonderful birth. Well, I did a lot of work around it, but talking about using that voice, and I send love to all Black women who are really going through a lot of things maternally. But I remember doing research about that. Asking questions. I asked some doctors. I did not like their answers. I walked out of a doctor's and I said, I'm not going to have a baby in that kind of setting. And I changed it. And I think about that with my life. Everyone is different, but I literally spoke up. I was asking questions. I had a notebook. Like I'm 8 weeks pregnant with a notebook. The doctor's laughing at me with my notebook. And I said, no, I'm not going to do this. So I switch it. You want to call me loud? Look at the things it has drawn into my life because of me using my voice. I've gotten on the phone as an entrepreneur and called people and say, listen, you should hire us. And this is why. And sometimes they've hung up the phone and say, don't call us ever again. And sometimes they say, let's try. So, you embrace that. And I think, again, I can't say this enough, stacking up when it has worked for you. And when I look back over my life, like the old folks in church say, as I look back over my life, there's been more times than where it has benefited me than it has not. That's number one. Number two, something I'm very passionate about too, is conforming, period, right? So this is to young people, to older sisters who mentor young people, everyone. The world is changing so amazingly. I mean, technology is just, we are changing. I know young people who have graduated college and they will never have a formal job in the formal setting, right? Everything they're doing is freelance, part-time, bartering. I mean, so many different ways. So we have to look at this thing different. If we're telling somebody to dress up and button up and look like this and look like that, that's an old narrative. It's not benefiting us anymore. People are actually, you're interesting when your story is different. You're interesting when I have a young sister I mentor, and she was telling me about a college application. They're looking for different experience. They say they want to hear about your summer where you volunteered, or your summer when you went to this different place, or when you cut your hair. They're looking for those experiences. So we have to change our concepts about what it is to be a nice little girl. And it's not always what we thought, what we grew up with. And I think that's something that people really have to share with young people. You can do it differently. And if we need to look at examples, look at people. Keep talking about Cardi B because I do like her blueprint. I am a fan. But also look at Oprah Winfrey's career. I mean, I hope my daughter looks at my career. And I worked in corporate, and then I worked in another setting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The idea that we have all the answers is also wrong. That as adult women, we have to understand that. We have to understand that future generations can teach us a lot. And we have to be open to that discussion. So, like to your point of, wearing a suit on an interview, or, the old way of doing it is not necessarily the right way. But I wanted to talk finally about your T-shirts and the messaging on it that I speak fluent Black girl. I cannot tell you how much I love that. I love that. Tell us about why you decided that would be the message that you used for the Loud Girl movement. What made you use that phrase as the first symbol that somebody sees of the Loud Girl movement?
So that's a great question. Everyone has been asking us that. I remember I was out to lunch with a good friend of mine. Like we were joking, you kikiing with your friend. And I was like, girl, I speak fluent Black girl. And we just bust out laughing. And she said, that needs to be a T-shirt. And really, going back, I'm using Michelle Obama to Cardi B. They're my two polar examples today. But that's Black girl. Literally, taking your story and making something with it, doing it differently and saying, no, I will wear sleeveless dress as the first lady, which seems like not a big deal, but I mean, literally, she did that on her official photo. For someone saying, going to the Golden Globes and saying, I'm rooting for everybody that's Black, that all of these, the way we speak is speaking fluent Black girl, but also because I do love history and I always will pull on history. It's Madam C.J. Walker saying, I'm going to do my business differently. And I'm going to have sales representatives all over the country. And I will become America's first millionaire, male or female, because of this. That's innovation. So speaking Black girl literally is our sayings, our terms, our yes, our get it girl, go girl. But it's also how we speak to get things done differently. And I have to say this. I'm a big person of saying what Black folks can do, because I think the fact that we are still here making it through what we've been through in this country is amazing. We are a victory story. So I love every time you see those victories and Black women are doing that in their business, that's speaking fluent Black girl too. Because we all know what the experience is in America, being a Black person, being a Black woman. So whenever someone does something that is extraordinary and it's awesome and they did it with their own voice and their own way, again, talking about conforming, that's speaking fluent Black girl. So that's what the phrase means. It's everything that is a part of us, and it's everything extraordinary that we do. And when you do that, you're speaking fluent Black girl.
So as we're visible women trying to fight for Black girls, I would say my take home from what you shared with us is using your voice and using it differently, changing, elevating, amplifying your voice is part of what the solution is. It's taking that historical context, it's taking that which we already do well and maybe expanding it and doing it differently. It has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, and we are happy to support the Loud Girl movement. We'll share your information via our social media channels, and just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your voice with us and being loud with us.
Thank you for having me, you all. This has been so much fun. Kim, it was so nice meeting you, Corynne. You've always been a big buddy of mine. Thank you so much. I love what you all are doing here and creating space to talk and really talk openly too, which is I'm so grateful for that. So thank you all so much for having me.
That's our show for today. Look for the latest installment of the Visible Women podcast every other Wednesday, where we tackle issues and experiences that relate to appearance, diversity, and inclusion, and that are relevant to our lives. Check out our website, visiblewomenpodcast.com, where you can follow us on all of our social channels. And make sure you join our Facebook group for a follow-up discussion on today's topic. Until then, here's to all the visible women out there. Never forget that we see you.